Welcome everyone. Today we're taking a look at the SSL UC1. This is the Solid State Logic UC1 control surface. It gives you direct control over their Channel Strip 2 plugin, their 4K channel strips, as well as their legendary bus compressor plugin. Not only that, but with the recent update, it gives you control over some third-party plugins as well. And it comes packaged with their own 360 application. Basically what that does is it takes all UC1 enabled plugins and puts them all into one window for quicker access and control, but more about that in a minute. For now, let's go ahead and take a look at the front of the UC1. All right, I'm not gonna go super deep into each knob on here because we've all been using the SSL channel strip for years, either on an actual console or in plugin form, so this should all look really familiar to you. But starting at the top left, of course you have your high and low filters, and then your 4-band EQ under that. Jumping to the right side, the rest of your channel strip, this is your dynamic section, starting with your compressor at the top, and then your gate right below that. And then in the middle, you have a really nice input and output meter flanking your bus compressor. Now right below that, we start to get into some new things. So there's an LED screen that shows you what channels you currently have selected. The knob on the left controls which channel you have selected for your channel strip, and the knob just to the right of the screen controls which channel you have selected for your bus compressor. Also, if you push down on that right knob, it gives you some very basic start and stop transport controls on the front of your UC1. Just to the right of that knob, there's an extremely handy button that says 360 on it. Press that and it toggles you back and forth between your DAW window and your 360 window. This goes a long way in improving the workflow of using the UC1. Right below that, a magnifying glass. This just zooms in and out when you're in the 360 window. And then to the right of that, you have some basic cut and solo and bypass functions. So first of all, I have to say the UC1 looks and feels great, but it is SSL, so no one should really be surprised by that. They only make quality hardware. One of my last reviews, I reviewed a different control surface by a different manufacturer, and I mentioned that the knobs and the faders felt cheap. That is not the case with the UC1. Everything on it feels really good. I have spent years on an SSL AWS 948 Delta console, and so I have quite a bit of experience with an SSL channel strip, and I have to say that the UC1 feels just as good. And speaking of consoles, it's very clear what SSL was going for here. They want you to take their channel strip and put it on every channel in your DAW, their bus compressor and put it on every bus, and then basically treat your session like it's on a virtual SSL console. And that's exactly what I did, and I gotta say, I loved it. I'd been looking for a universal channel strip that I could use for a couple of years and just haven't found anything that I really liked, and I'm ashamed to say I had not yet tried the SSL channel strip, but once I tried it out, it worked for everything I put it on, and I was really happy with it. And of course, the bus compressor plugin I've been using for a long time on every session, so I was super familiar with that. So what were my overall thoughts on the SSL UC1? Well, there are three main takeaways. One is the feel. That's the biggest one. I grew up on analog equipment where every function had its own knob. You would turn that knob and there would be a connection to what you're hearing change. In modern mixing in the box, so often it starts to feel almost like you're doing data entry or like working on a spreadsheet because you're just looking at a screen all day. Well, the UC1 reconnected me to the music. I could feel again the changes that were happening as I was moving the knob. It started to make things feel more like an art again and less like a science. Takeaway number two ties in very much to point number one, which is mixing with your ears. So again, a trap we all fall into nowadays is we're working in our DAW, we pull up an EQ, we start to make some pretty drastic changes, and then we second guess ourselves because we see these giant EQ curves and we think, why do I have to give plus 12 dB at 10K to this vocal, or whatever. Well, with the knob, you just turn the knob till it sounds good and you don't care what it looks like. And sounding good at the end of the day is really all that matters. The third and final takeaway is the workflow. In just the couple of weeks that I've had the UC1, I've seen a slight increase in the speed that I finish my mixes, but I imagine if I had it for months and months, that I would see a much more substantial speed increase in my mix time. And then I would have time to finish more mixes, or I would just have more free time, whatever I wanted. Now the UC1 is not without its flaws. Actually, when I first got it, I was having some problems with the LED screen functionality as well as some of the transport controls on the front. And that's when I decided to read the manual. The manual informed me that all of the firmware updates happened automatically through the 360 application. So I powered down my machine and the UC1, brought it all back up, and that's when the 360 app told me that of course I needed a firmware update. Once it updated the UC1, everything worked perfectly. It was great. I'm just not sure why it let me use it for 2 weeks before it told me that I needed the update. Also, while I was in the manual, I learned about all these cool features that it has and all of the DAWs that it worked on. You got DAW, volume, and pan control, track color, sense control, synchronized DAW track selection, solo and mute control, track number, and track name. They even put it in this handy graph so you could see what features work for what DAWs. Up top, we see Reaper, and then Studio One, Ableton Live, that's a good one. Cubase, I've used that one for a while. Logic Pro, that seems to be missing a lot of features. Oh no, Pro Tools! That's right, all of the features offered by the UC1 don't work in Logic or Pro Tools. Now, I'm not a software developer, so I can't tell you if this is an SSL problem or an Avid problem, or maybe even a licensing issue. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I just want my stuff to work as well as possible, and I don't like seeing that there are features available for other DAWs that aren't available for Pro Tools, which is what I use. Now, the control surface I mentioned earlier through HUI controls will tell you with a highlight what channel you're working on, so why the UC1 can't do that, I don't know. Also, it'd be really helpful if maybe that magnifier button on the front of the UC1 opened up the plugin you are currently working on with your control surface. That way you could see it within your DAW. But fret not, SSL addresses each of those issues, and that's where the 360 application comes in. Now, I don't have any inside information, but I feel like they created the 360 application as a direct solution for the lack of features and functionality within Pro Tools and Logic. Because once you're in the 360 app, it does exactly what you would expect it to. Now, the workflow in the beginning felt a little clunky going back and forth between my DAW and 360. However, thanks to the inclusion of that 360 button that I showed you earlier on the front of the UC1, it started to feel smooth pretty quickly going back and forth with one button press. And also, the UC1 has those transport controls on the front as well as within the 360 app. So after a little time, I was actually faster going back and forth between those two than I would be opening up a plugin within my DAW. Did the UC1 make me a better mix engineer? Maybe, maybe not. But what it definitely did is it improved the experience of the mix and made it much more enjoyable. The hardware and the plugins are packaged together for around $800. So if you're looking to reestablish that connection with the music you're mixing, improve your workflow, and you're ready to make a commitment to the SSL plugin suite, then the UC1 is definitely for you. I loved working with it, and I plan on making it a permanent addition to my desk. Thanks to SSL for sending it out for me to demo. If you have any questions about the SSL UC1 or anything else on the channel, make sure to leave a comment down below. Thanks for hanging out with me this long. We'll see you next time.